Hello and welcome to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis James, and today I'm very excited because I'm covering one of my all-time favorite bands. But before I get to that, please hit the subscribe button. Help me grow the channel. This is our 4th episode. You're in on the ground floor, and subscribing really helps me. So please hit that button if you haven't. It's either over here or it's over here. One of them. I don't know. But today we've got a great episode. The B-52'S, one of my all-time favorite bands to see live. I've seen them like 4 or 5 times. Always a great party band. For me, the B-52'S means a few things. They mean fun, they mean dancing, and they mean Ricky Wilson's guitar work. So that's the B-52'S I'm going to be concentrating on. Ricky Wilson's guitar. And it's present from even before they had a record contract back in '78 all the way up through Bouncing Off the Satellites, their last album with Ricky, before he died, unfortunately. So let's get started. The debut, fantastic debut. Everything that they do well is already in full bloom. You have Fred Schneider on vocals, ridiculously game show host quality vocals. Cindy Wilson, beautiful, plaintive voice, sweet sounding, but also real, she's got some grit in it when she wants it. Kate Pearson, she can go anywhere with her voice, very strong voice. She's the heavier of the 2 voices of the female singers. Keith Strickland, the drummer, fantastic drummer, but he's really, even then, a multi-instrumentalist. He can play anything, and his drumming propels the band. He was like a metronome. He was very tight. Ricky Wilson's guitar work was anything but tight. It was wild. It was crazy. And the way that Ricky's off-kilter guitar work meshed with Keith's rock-solid drumming and Kate's bass, synth, and Farfisa compact keyboard was the backbone of the band. And what they could do musically together really didn't sound like anything else that was out at the time or now. A quick word about Ricky Wilson's guitar work. He used open tunings a lot. The thing that truly made him kind of a breed apart from other guitarists is that he would remove the 3rd and 4th strings off his guitar, which was usually a blue Maserite Mark V. Maserites were used by like the guys in the MC5, Johnny Ramone, the guys in the Ventures played it. So it's really known for its strong rhythm work, and he was a rhythm guy, and he was a strong tone guy. And the way he got that wacky tone was by removing the 3rd and 4th strings. Sometimes he would play with 5 strings. He would only remove the 3rd string, or the G. And he attacked the strings. He would use a super heavy set of strings, almost like bass strings, heaviest he could find, because he hit them really hard and used a heavy pick as well. And he would almost have a slap and pull on some songs that gave it the illusion that you're hearing 2 guitars at once. That's the kind of sound he could provide, and it's all in spades here. The album, of course, houses Rock Lobster, which was their super big hit that took over the world, and deservedly so. But it boasts a lot of other great songs. Incidentally, Rock Lobster came out prior to this, a single of Rock Lobster on DB Records, and it had Rock Lobster on the A side and 52 Girls on the B side, both of which are on here. But that version of Rock Lobster, believe it or not, if you know the original, it's actually faster. It's faster and it's grittier, which is nice, but it's also skinnier. It doesn't pack the punch that the re-recorded Rock Lobster in here does. So you're not missing something. It should be heard though, so look it up. There are some extra lines. You get more sea animals in the single version, more sea animals are talked about by Fred. So listen for that. The cover was designed by Tony Wright. He later did the Bob Marley Natty Dread album. He did Steve Winwood's Ark of a Diver. He did Bob Dylan's Saved. So he was a good art director. And this kind of tells you, as any good cover does, this tells you that this isn't a normal band you're about to hear. This kind of captures their sound visually. So Tony Wright did a really good job there. Incidentally, for Rock Lobster, Ricky Wilson, upon writing it, he ran into the band and he was showing them the song, and he literally said, "I've just written the stupidest guitar line you've ever heard." So that was the mark of a good guitar line to Ricky. His guitar tech, who was married to, is married, I believe, still, to Cindy Wilson. At the time they were just dating. He used to tune all of Ricky's guitars before concerts, and he would tune them perfectly. And then Ricky would go into the room, and he would sit down and just stare off into space and adjust the tunings, put them out of whack. The guitar tech said that he would get them perfect so that Ricky could take them and kind of de-perfect them to his liking. And he didn't really understand how to tune a guitar. He worked with Richard Lloyd once, because Ricky plays on the 1979 Tom Verlaine solo album the song "Breaking in My Heart," which for '79, for him to grab Ricky Wilson, good on Tom Verlaine. He knew talent when he saw one. But he was mystified because Ricky didn't seem to understand normal tunings. But it didn't matter at all, because he got the sounds he wanted, and he could play with anyone. Other great songs on here: "Dance This Mess Around," one of my all-time favorite songs by them. "Lava" is a good song. It name checks Krakatoa, Pompeii, Herculaneum. So you're getting an education with the B-52'S. There's all kinds of great songs on this. 52 Girls is a fantastic guitar-based rocker. The song "Planet Claire" is kind of a sci-fi lullaby that opens up with Morse code. Morse code by this little guy right here, this little transceiver. Incidentally, this is Ricky's guitar. I don't know if you can see, if you can make out the middle guitar's strings are not there, but this was the blue Maserite that he played, and it's fantastic. I have multiple copies of this album because although there's nothing wrong with the Warner Brothers copy, it sounds fantastic. They were very well recorded, the B-52'S, their entire career. The debut was produced by Chris Blackwell at Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas, in Nassau, where he built that studio. He recorded them. Great sound, pristine sound. But there is another version, this one here, that says "Play Loud," and it's the yellow label. If you see it in the stores, go for the yellow label. It's just mastered higher. There's better separation on it. It just kind of is a very, I don't know what, more organic sound. And that's the copy you want. The B-52'S, their sophomore album, no Sophomore Slump. And the reason is because the bulk of these songs are just holdovers from songs that they've been playing live for years, since '78. They've been playing all these songs, and they held back some real, they knew they would be hits. They held back Party Out of Bounds and Private Idaho because they knew that they wanted to have hit songs on their second album. They wanted a strong second album, and this is that. Those two songs, of course, are very well known. But, Give Me Back My Man is one of my all-time favorite B-52 song. It's maybe their most underrated song because even if you know it and you're like, yeah, that's cool, I don't know if you truly get how great it is until you hear it multiple times. Cindy on that song, she just carries that song on her back. She's pleading to give her man back. And there's a line in that, walking out of Corvettes, package in her hand. For New Yorkers of a certain age, just the reference of Corvettes is fantastic to you. I think they had those stores. They were big chain stores. I think they had them in Chicago also and other Pennsylvania. But there's just something about that line that is so charming, so utterly charming to me. So like I said, this album had a lot of holdovers from their set list. There were things like Devil in My Car, which is a perfect song by B-52 standards. It's everything that they do well in a song. It's literal. There is a devil in her car, or his car. I don't know whose car, but it's one of their cars. But then they also have Dirty Back Road, which is a gritty guitar track with very subversive lyrics and doubled vocals by the ladies that is just delicious and delightful. It was produced by Rhett Davies. Rhett Davies, by the way, would go on to produce a lot of people in the 70s and 80s. He worked with Roxy Music a lot. He produced some great Brian Eno albums, which are Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy, and he did Another Green World. He did Before and After Science. So he knew how to capture sounds, even if they're very light and ambient. So he had no problem capturing the raucousness of the B-52's. So the first two albums come out. They do very well. The first album is like platinum, and the second album quickly goes gold. And then they drop Party Mix because they're all out of songs. And they have to go into the studio. They go in the studio with David Byrne from Talking Heads. They begin working on their third LP. In the meantime, Party Mix comes out, and it is remixes of a collection of the first two album songs. There's Party Out of Bounds, Private Idaho, Give Me Back My Man, Lava, Dance This Mess Around, and 52 Girls. And what makes this interesting, I avoided it when it came out in the stores. I erroneously thought it was just a cash grab and a bit of merch to have something to buy. It was not. It was truly intended to be a fun party album. And what's great about this album is side 1 and side 2, respectively, are just one long song. They just bleed into each other. The remixes themselves are great. This is my favorite version of Party Out of Bounds. There's something about the echo chambery production that kind of makes you feel like you're at the party. It draws you in. There's a chaos to the mix that I think really suits it. The segue, like I say, they're all one long song. The segue from Dance This Mess Around into 52 Girls, you really should hear. It's just, it's like a great DJ is at the helm, working the decks, and just blending these songs seamlessly into each other. Sometimes it doesn't quite work. There's one, I forget which one, but it's just like sort of drum machine that just leads into the next one. But by and large, it's very underrated. And I wish I had seeked it out years earlier because I missed out on some really good, fun B-52s. Which brings us to Mesopotamia. This is overall an underrated mini LP. It's an EP, really. It was meant to be an LP, but the B-52's, they were in the studio, they were out of songs, they had already exhausted the songs that they knew and they were playing live for years. So they have David Byrne producing, and they use different instruments. They use different production techniques. There's like bongos on here. There's all sorts of things that you don't think of when you think of the usual B-52 sound. But the lead track, Mesopotamia, is fantastic. Loveland is an underrated track. Cindy Wilson's vocals carry that song on her back. It's got things like Deep Sleep, which I wasn't crazy about the first time I heard it, but now I kind of like it. It's very drony and sleepwalky, almost, I don't know what. It's hypnotizing in its way. But there's a song on here where it almost defies Byrne's production. Nip It in the Bud. It's the B-52's You Already Love. It is just a fantastic EP. It had some songs left off it. They really had to get out of the studio. David Byrne had ideas on mixing the album. The B-52's had ideas on mixing the album, and they did not jibe. And the record company wanted them to hurry up and get the album in the stores. So rather than finish work on a full length, they simply dropped Mesopotamia on you, which is 6 songs, I believe. And I really like it. I think it's a fun album. It's a great departure for them. They were in search of a new sound. Not necessarily that they needed it, but they wanted a little bit of diversity. And they got it. Hey, Hollis, why do you have 2 copies? Well, funny you should ask. This is the British version, and the UK copy has extra long versions of Loveland, my second favorite song on this album. It's like an extra 3 minutes, 35 seconds or something. And Cake, another song on this album that's elongated for the European market. This was later recalled, and the American versions are on all subsequent pressings. If you have a CD, you might be like, hey, this isn't longer. It was vinyl only, so you can still hear those mixes. Go on YouTube, hear them if you want. But that was Mesopotamia. Incidentally, they went on the Mesoamerica tour. Isn't that a great title? And they brought a sax guy, Ralph Carney, and a trumpet player, David Buck. So it was a fuller sound. Kate Pearson, she was able to ditch the bass synth that she played along with the Farfisa organ. She got a synthesizer that did both of those jobs as well as other things. So it was a much fuller sound when they went on tour, and they were playing all different kinds of songs and recording in different ways. And when they got back to the studio, they dropped Whammy on us. There are a few songs on here. Big Bird, Butterbean, and Queen of Las Vegas, which were supposed to be on the Mesopotamia album. They were even recorded for Mesopotamia. But they didn't quite fit, or they got kicked off at the last minute. Big Bird, off this album, was actually on the Mesopotamia album. And at the 11th hour, the record company kicked it off in favor of, what is the sleep song? I mentioned it. Deep Sleep. And the band were not happy about that. In fact, they played Big Bird all along the Mesoamerica tour. But anyway, it's on here, Whammy. Whammy is one of my favorite B-52's albums. It's got Whammy Kiss, which is everything they do well, all in one song. Fred really carries that song. The girls are fantastic on it. They're women, but I mean, I call them girls because those vocals are what they do well is they have this juvenile quality to their voices on certain choruses, and Whammy Kiss is one of them. It's almost like a sweet kind of teenagers in the back of the car kind of singing. Anyway, Legal Tender is a great song all about counterfeiting cash. And Song for a Future Generation is the first appearance of all of the members' vocals. Ricky and Keith even sing on that one. And it is really hysterically funny and sugary, ear-catching song. Incidentally, this is the first album by the B-52's where Ricky and Keith play all of the instruments themselves. Because they were the two studio rats and the real music guys who liked having control over that. And it works to good effect here. It seems like with the more electronic sound of this album, they got the departure they were hoping for with Mesopotamia, except they did it on their own terms, and enough of their own sound shines through. So yeah, that's Whammy. I really like it. There's Trism is an underrated song on it, and there's a cover of a Yoko Ono song, Don't Worry, on here that was subsequently taken off. If you have any CDs of it or beyond, it's not on there, but it's on the vinyl, and it's I think if anyone was going to cover a Yoko Ono song, it should have been the Bees. Like, they were great, and they're kind of wacky enough to pull it off. Bouncing off the Satellites, the final Ricky Wilson album. Ricky unfortunately died of complications of AIDS in 1985, I want to say. I believe October of 85 or so, or thereabouts. And this album came out in 86. They had already finished work on it. They had finished the overdubs and the mixing. I think maybe there were one or two touches to be put on it, but all of Ricky's work was done prior to this. They did not have as much material, Keith and Ricky, music-wise, so a couple of things were included that, like Kate and Fred had been working on solo, respectively. I think that's Housework and Juicy Jungle. So they're on here, but by and large, it's a B-52's album. It's a proper B-52's album. Summer of Love is a very sweet, positive song, but the production on it is kind of melancholy and is at odds with the sunny lyrics. Also, Girl from Ipanema Goes to Greenland is a very fun single, which incidentally you could have picked up at Tower Records for $3.99 back in the day. Wig is a great song that became a live staple later on. That is the archetypical B-52's with the kind of kitschy lyrics and the fun call and response. This is a very underrated album. People see this as a sad album because of Ricky, but it wasn't meant to be a sad album. And there are sunny moments on it. I think overall it suffers due to the production on it, and some songs that could have stood out a little better get kind of buried in the production. She Breaks for Rainbows is a personal deep cut fave for me. So that was it for the Ricky Wilson B-52's. There are bootlegs out. This one, Enola Gay, Enola misspelled, came from England. It was released in 1980. It was 2 concerts, one from August of '79 in Boston, and one from the Downtown Cafe in Athens, GA, I believe, in '79. Very good sound on this, well recorded, and it's a double LP. Rhino finally released one of the concerts on here, under the title 8/24/1979, which was the date it was recorded. It's the Boston one, which was at the Berkeley Center in Boston, and it has pretty good sound. It's cleaned up a bit, but not really the exact same sound as on here. I think it's just mastered. They put a little gloss on it, but the grit remains. There's one song on here, Modine, that they were playing. It just goes to show you they were playing it way back in the old days in '79, and it didn't show up until I believe the Good Stuff album in the '90s. So the B-52's did not throw anything away. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you love the B-52's as much as I do. Please read the description below. I talk about everything that I talked about in this episode, but I do it a lot cleaner. And there are links if you want to check out the music. But please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.